Develop a fortune state of mind, state of mind. It's time for a date with, time for a date with the Dorseys.
Hello, this is another date with the Dorseys, and I am Dr. Jatan.
And I am Floyd Dorsey, the fourth.
Oh, Lord, now he want to throw that in there, huh?
Let you know it's the fourth.
Let y'all further know. So today's topic, as usual, is hot to trot. And today we are talking about, or really asking the question, do you hear me now?
Do you hear me now?
Right. And we've seen the popular commercial with, was it Sprint or Verizon?
One of them.
One of them, right? Where the guy walks around with this phone continuously asking that question, do you hear me now?
Or can you hear me now?
Or can you hear me now?
But one
can
of
you,
them.
yeah, can you hear me now? Yeah, he said, you want to correct me now.
Well, hey, it's okay. It's okay.
Well, can you hear me now, right? So he's making these moves, trying to get in a good spot with a good reception so he can be heard.
That's it. Bottom line.
Bottom line, I just want to be heard. We all want to be heard. So we are going to share a couple tips today on how to best communicate, whether it be in a relationship or
it could be, I don't know, when you're pursuing a relationship.
right.
Some people that are single are looking to establish a relationship. Some that are married have relationships. So I think it fits for all different types of situations, right? Either you're single, you're dating, having communication, or even just interacting with people, period. And
right.
I think this can carry over even some of the points that we're going to share, even beyond your love life and your personal life into your business and things of that nature, because I think effective communication is important regardless.
Right. Communication in general. And a lot of times we struggle with that. When we talk about relationship, workplace, in many different aspects, we struggle with it. And then there's the thing of having to be familiar with your audience. So you have to adjust to whom you're talking to,
Exactly.
right? So we can go right into the
Let's
first
do it.
topic.
Let's
Okay,
do it.
perfect.
First, number one is understanding your mate's communication style. While we say understanding your mate's, I think it's also important to understand your own. Because some people, I think a lot of people are known and they're cognizant of spending time to understand how other people like to hear information or receive information. But a lot of times I don't think people really understand themselves as well, right? So I think it's two parts on how you like to receive information, how do you like to be effectively communicated to, and what ways. There's one book, I know we've read it several years ago, The 5 Love Languages, and it talks about communication styles and things of that nature, right? But beyond that, it's important to know, there's a place in this time and there's a way to message certain things. And being effective and understanding your mates or even your own communication style is important to be able to close the gap, making sure that the message that is intended to be heard and received is actually the message that was received.
And when we talk about understanding your mate as well and knowing their communication style, it reminds me of knowing someone's learning style as well. Because everyone learns a different way, right? You may learn better by writing it. You may learn better by hearing it. But the point is to know exactly the best environment or, approach or method for you to receive that information. And that's pretty much what we're saying from a communication style. Because if you don't know how you best receive information, then how can you show someone else how to communicate to you?
That's it. And some of the interesting things I've found is that, people typically have triggers within them, right? One thing is to know how they receive it, but another way is to know is how not to communicate to a particular person.
Yeah.
Right? So people have triggers, and what I found, some of those triggers are developed as in their childhood, in the earlier years of development. You may grow up in a home where you had parents that screamed or yelled or talked fairly loud. And that probably bothers you or created some type of stigma or issue within that particular person. So that now as an adult, either that person communicates that same way and wonders why it's not being received because that's how they grew up and that's what they know and they think is normal. Or an individual would have a problem if someone raised their voice or yelled or screamed and it really shuns them away, or they would close down in such a way. Shut down, right? And it's those type of things or those type of conversations that must take place. and really going deeper beyond the surface on communication styles, but really go deeper as to how was the environment, how are, growing up, and what makes you comfortable, makes you happy, all those type of things when you're talking about communication.
Yeah, and when you talk about knowing how that person grew up, especially in a relationship, that's important, right? Those are some questions that you can ask to better help yourself understand their way of communication. And even if they can't communicate it to you, then knowing and asking those questions can give you some insight into that.
Yeah. And when we say communication styles, I mean, it could be where some people just really don't like to talk as much, while others, they may have been the only child, right? So they just talk on and on and on because they really never had anyone to talk to.
Yeah, that was bad. He slipped that one in. I think you're trying to talk about your girl.
But I mean, it's just something to consider. Some people may be more effective in their writing style. They rather communicate written text messages or writing a letter or a love note or whatever it may be.
Or someone may, like to tell stories. They communicate well with telling stories, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's me. I enjoy telling stories or giving analogies to drive home my points. But again, it varies. So it's important to know it. Now, again, when you get in a work setting, there are prescribed methods of communicating in your particular professional environment. So, of course, it's important if you're going to be in that environment to know, to adapt, to adjust your communication style to be effective in that environment.
All right. So then the second principle or recommendation that we'd like to offer is seeking first to understand. And I love this one because I often tell or give this advice to others, first listen to understand and not listen to respond.
That's it.
Because if you're listening to respond, then you're really not hearing what that person is saying. You're really just trying to plot your response you can prove your point.
Ready to clap back. I got something for you. You come on.
Right.
Matter of fact, I've thought about 3 points that I'm going to say to you, and I'm just waiting for that opportunity to interject,
Never mind what you just said. I kind of tuned out.
Yeah. But, we fail to really understand what's really going on. If you really listen to understand, you may find that you truly agree with the person and what they're saying.
Or maybe find some other insight that helps you see something different.
You make a great point.
Yeah.
I appreciate the value you're bringing.
Right.
So that's very important. I can't stress that enough. Really listening to understand an individual as opposed to, just ready to respond and having your gun loaded and ready to fire back.
Right on
now, again, it sounds good when we're saying this now, but when you're in the midst of of an argument that's heated, it's a little bit challenging, which we both get and we understand and we live it, right? But it's important that we, I guess in our relationship, we take the step back and really just listen to the person. Now, there may be situations where it's just not time to have that conversation.
Yeah.
And so it's to put it on pause and to communicate that, hey, just not right now. Give me a few minutes.
And then the other person has to respect that and allow that space, right?
Agreed. And so once those things are understood, then you can really move forward with that next level of really having that conversation, that dialogue, that one can understand the other, and you can really get some type of mutual gain out of that conversation.
Mutual gain. I love that because when you think about listening to someone else, or rather not listening and just trying to get your response out, is more like you're keeping score and trying to prove a point, right? And every time you keep score, you always lose. That's one way I like to think of that.
As much as I like to look at the scoreboard, she's been sitting on this nugget telling me every time you look at the scoreboard, you're really losing.
You're losing. You're watching that clock, Yeah. So it's time to really have the conversation and indulge in what's going on in that moment and really truly understand what the other party is communicating, which takes us to...
Well, before we go there,
okay.
I think before we just jumped in there, and I think it's going to tie in well.
Right.
One thing is to understand what they're saying, to understand their thoughts and what they're communicating it from a mental standpoint, right? I truly understand what you're communicating. I hear you, in other words. But it's another thing to feel what that person is saying. And while you're seeking to understand, there are some other soul signs and emotions and things that are being sent, messages that are being sent.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So you have to be willing to embrace how they're communicating, what they're communicating, because sometimes it may come with a little bit more emotion and it's driving home a different point. Or at times it may be things that are not even communicated that drives home the main message that they're really trying to express. So seeking first to understand than to be understood. I think it's a key point, but it goes beyond just what's verbally being communicated.
Absolutely. And then there are opportunities to really dig deep if you know the person well enough, which goes beyond just them communicating to you, how they receive communication, right? Really knowing them, because there could be times where, we're having a conversation and I may not realize that it's obvious that something's bothering me. And you could ask me what's going on, and I'm like, I'm good.
This is a real situation that we experience, right? So we have situations where, I know my wife well enough to know at times when some things are not really being said, and so I have to, call her out in a nice
loving way, right?
Loving way,
of course.
Just to ask those, I have to probe a little bit more, because I know that I understand her background and her ways of communicating and how she communicates. So I know that for me to get out of her and help her, really communicate effectively to me, and I want to be clear on whatever it is, because I always want to solve stuff. That's me, right? I want to solve it. So I have to fully understand it. And if not getting all the information from her, then I have to probe. And I know sometimes in moments we may have that she may not just divulge everything out at one time or in one session. So again, it calls that probing. Yeah.
Yep. So that leads us into the final item. Well, kinda. We always say that, and we come up with some awesome other thoughts that grow from the discussion that we're having. But number 3 is to be sure that you're careful about what you're communicating, right? So now that you've understood how your mate communicates, and then you've also heard them so that you could understand, right? Now it's showing compassion more so from what you actually say in response to what they've communicated.
Compassion is key. And it goes with you knowing the environment, and having the timing, and the person, the people, the place, all that to communicate back. So you've understood what's going on, but now how do you want to deliver your message? Sometimes it's probably best not to say it all at that moment, just depending on the situation. But having that compassion when you do communicate, you're communicating out of love. And I think in every situation, passion, even in the moments of heightened passion, if you're coming from a place of love, then I think it can be received with love.
Right.
If you're coming out of anger and want to hurt you, then I would definitely, if that's the spirit, if that's the intent, then you definitely want to put that on pause and hold off on that one. But once it comes out, it's out. And so that is the point to really realize and reflect, what is it that I want this person to receive from me? Is it that I really want to share them some information or insights? Is it that I want them to convey or want to give them love? Or is it that I want to hurt them or cause pain because I hurt? And one thing that I've realized is that hurt people hurt people. So people that are hurting, they at times want to give out the hurt that they're feeling inside.
And sometimes not even realizing.
Yeah.
Especially in the heat of the moment, as you mentioned, when you're in pain. It doesn't have to be what you said. It could also be how you say it.
That's it.
So it's important to show that compassion in both ways, so that whatever you do say isn't something that can't be taken back and that can forever hurt a relationship. So, any final thoughts?
The final thoughts. Well, I will say, for me, since I'm one that's always, and this is something that I have to always continue to be mindful of, but I always want to solve situations, or I want to bring solutions, right? While every communication attempt or every dialogue may not cause for a solution, right? I have to keep that in mind. But the main thing I might not have a solution for, but I always want to bring closure to whatever it is in any communication setting or any discussion that I'm having. It's important to bring closure to it. While if it's just my wife coming home and she wants to vent for the day or had a rough day or whatever it may be, she's probably not calling for me to resolve something, right? It's just, all right, hear me out, give me some compassion, or whatever it may be, right? Just lend an ear.
And ladies, that's okay. We do that often. Yeah. I mean, I can't say men don't either, but I'm just saying we're very consistent with that. We just sometimes just want to be heard. We just want somebody to just listen and not offer, some feedback on why did you do that? You should have done this. No, just listen. And as he mentioned earlier, stories can get long.
They can get long. I'm telling you. And
I want to tell every intricate detail so you can feel like you were there.
I mean, I went to the door. I touched the knob. I thought about unlocking it, but then I didn't want to turn this. I mean, we could go on. I'm like, okay, so you just tell me you open the door? Oh, okay, all right. That's the level of detail. But I understand it's important that, she really communicates whatever it is. She expresses herself. And I have the same air to do as I communicate when I'm expressing. But again, that's one thing that I have to learn is that there's not always a solution to everything every point of communication. However, one thing I do find is that there's always a way to close out the conversation to make sure that the person who you were communicating with was able to effectively or to get everything off their chest, off their mind that they wanted to communicate, and vice versa. So it's never a point of carrying on disagreements for months and months and months. Like I don't.
Yeah, not just getting off your chest, but actually, finding the resolve if there needs to be one, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And if it gets overheated, then, deciding on when you can come back and revisit this issue, because without you dealing with it, it's going to continue to come up. It's like having a plant and it's dying and you pluck off some petals and you think it's good, but that petal will grow back and die again. You got to dig the root up.
You have to go to the root, go to the source. So just with any communication, making sure you're probing and asking those questions. But at the very end, in one way or another, if it's coming up with a solution or if it's just hearing them out and making sure that the person is okay or whatever it is, it's finding the closure on the topic so that now you can move forward and you close that particular topic out. And other things, of course, will come up. But the last thing you want is things lingering and never effectively or fully being resolved before you just continue on with your life.
All right. Because that would be a miserable continuation.
Yes, it would be. It would be.
So that has been yet another awesome topic. And I got to ask you, can you hear us now? It should be very loud and clear. We shared 3 with a bonus. With a bonus. We always got to add a little bonus here and there, right? So it's understanding your mate's communication style, seeking first to understand, and then also being careful about how you communicate and what you communicate, because you can never take it back once it's outside of your mouth, right?
That's it.
And then finally, finding that closure, because we want to effectively resolve whatever issue it is that's lingering so that we can move on in love and happiness and
love
peace.
And happiness.
Love and happiness.
Love and happiness.
I knew he was going to go there. Well, this has been yet another date with the Dorseys. As usual, we would love for you to reach out to us. Let us know how you're enjoying the podcast. And also if you have any questions, because as we mentioned, we will be having an episode where we actually address all the questions, right?
Yes.
I look forward to that. So keep all the emails coming to support@fortuneenterprise.com. And as you remember, Fortune is spelled IV.
T-U-N-E.
Okay, I had to test them out, y'all, to see if you knew what it was. Enterprise.com. So make sure you do email us so that we can remain in contact and respond back as quickly as possible. So we look forward to yet another episode next week. So make sure you tune in. Make sure you're sharing. All that good stuff.
That good stuff.
So until next time, make it a great day.
Have a good one.
Develop a fortune state of mind, state of mind. It's time for a date with the Dorseys.